The desert didn't care about Christmas. 28 degrees Fahrenheit at 11:47 p.m., December 24th, 2034. The kind of cold that turned breath into frozen ghosts and made metal burn skin on contact. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rhett stood outside the command tent at the Mojave Desert Training Facility, watching the wind carve serpent patterns through sand that should have been sleeping. 36 years in the teams, 36 Christmases traded for service. This would be his last. Somewhere in Virginia, families gathered around trees strung with lights that didn't flicker in brutal wind. Children tore wrapping paper with the savage joy of innocence, protected by men who stood watch in places like this, places where celebration went to die. The observation tower rose against the black sky like a skeletal finger pointing at nothing. Someone had tried. LED lights wrapped the railing in desperate red and green, blinking against the emptiness with the stubborn faith of tradition refusing to surrender. They cast color across Rhett's weathered face, 54 years etched in lines that mapped deployments from the Cold War's dying breath through decades of sand and secrets. A plastic Christmas tree leaned against the armory door, its branches coated in fine desert grit. Appropriate. Even manufactured cheer couldn't survive out here untainted. This is some bullshit, Sarge. Petty Officer Tyler Bishop emerged from the tent carrying 2 cups of coffee that steamed like signal flares in the frigid air. 35 years old, weapons specialist, skeptic by training and temperament, his face held the particular displeasure of a man who'd calculated exactly how many hours until his daughter opened presents without him. Christmas Eve, Bishop continued, handing Rhett the coffee. My kid's asleep right now dreaming about Santa. I'm freezing my ass off watching target dummies that aren't going anywhere. Rhett took the cup. The heat felt like mercy. Could be worse. Yeah? How? Could be Kandahar. Bishop's expression shifted. They'd both lost people to Kandahar. Different years, same sand, same silence that followed. He didn't push the comparison. The facility held 5 Navy SEALs on skeleton rotation. Christmas duty, the kind of assignment that made grown men question their life choices, while simultaneously understanding exactly why those choices mattered. Most serious training operations had been suspended for the holiday. This was supposed to be maintenance work, equipment checks, light drills, the kind of duty you could perform while your mind lived somewhere else entirely. Lieutenant Jackson Cade, their officer in charge, had tried to make it tolerable. He'd authorized the decorations, arranged care packages from home, even let them play cards in the ready room, as long as someone maintained watch on the range. 38 years old, by the book, the kind of officer who believed in rules because rules kept people alive. But the Mojave swallowed every attempt at comfort. The wind carried sand that stung like frozen needles. The lights flickered constantly, making shadows dance in ways that triggered instincts honed in darker places. And underneath everything lived the knowledge that while they stood here, the rest of the world was warm. Together, celebrating something other than survival. A radio on a supply crate played the same 6 Christmas songs on loop, signal weak enough that Bing Crosby sounded like he was drowning. White Christmas crackled through static, a song about snow sung in a desert that hadn't seen moisture in months. Movement, Specialist Brenna Locke's voice cut through the radio from the tower. 29, Communications Specialist, Montana Ranch family, the kind of tracker who read landscapes like other people read faces. Her voice carried the flat calm of someone reporting facts, not fear. Vehicle approaching North Gate. Rhett checked his watch. 23:53. 7 minutes before Christmas Day. 7 minutes before midnight in a place where time felt negotiable. We expecting anyone? Bishop asked. Kate emerged from the command tent, tablet in hand. His expression was carefully neutral, the kind of blank that meant someone with more rank had just complicated his night. We are now, Cade said. The Humvee rolled through the gate, trailing dust like a wedding veil. It stopped near the main tent, engine ticking as it cooled. A figure stepped out from the driver's side. Captain Richard Vance, 50 years old, Special Operations Assessment Group, the kind of officer whose uniform looked pressed even after hours in a vehicle. His movements carried the mechanical efficiency of someone who delivered difficult news before breakfast. Rhett didn't recognize him. That meant spook work. That meant complications. "Who's this?" Bishop muttered. "Test evaluation," Cade said quietly. His voice held the resignation of a man who'd read orders he couldn't question. "Came through 2 hours ago. Encrypted. Above my clearance to discuss details." Vance approached with footsteps that barely disturbed sand. "Lieutenant Cade." "Captain Richard Vance, Special Operations Assessment. I have a candidate requiring desert qualification tonight." "Tonight?" Cade's voice was flat. "It's Christmas Eve, sir. We're running skeleton crew." The calendar was noted in my orders. No apology in Vance's tone. No explanation. Just fact delivered with the weight of authority that didn't require justification. Assessment parameters are time-sensitive. The Humvee's passenger door opened. She emerged like someone stepping onto a stage she'd built herself. Not hesitant, not apologetic, just present with the kind of stillness that suggested coiled capability. Mid-20s, maybe 5'7", athletic build, not gym-sculpted but field-hardened. The kind of lean that came from carrying gear over distance. Dark blonde hair pulled back in a braid tight enough to last days. Combat boots broken in properly. Tactical pants and jacket that had seen actual use, not just equipment room issue. Her eyes swept the facility with systematic precision. Not nervous, cataloging. Threat assessment running behind gray eyes that held winter's exact color. She moved toward them with footsteps that barely registered. Red had spent decades around operators. He recognized the walk. This wasn't someone playing soldier. This was someone who'd learned to move through hostile territory where sound meant death. "You've got to be kidding me," Bishop said, not quite under his breath. The woman's gaze flicked toward him. Didn't linger. Just acknowledged and dismissed in the same moment. Her face showed nothing. No anger at the comment. No need to prove anything. Just the blank neutrality of someone conserving energy for battles that actually mattered. Vance handed Cade a tablet. "Her file. You'll note the redactions." Cade's eyes scanned the screen. Rhett watched his jaw tighten incrementally. The only sign of whatever he was reading. Most of the document was black bars. Sections redacted with the kind of thoroughness that suggested someone powerful wanted information buried. But some details remained visible. Name: Winter Noel E. Rank: Captain, U.S. Army Ranger status. Dishonorably discharged. Reason: refusal to engage enemy combatant/insubordination. Date of discharge: June 14th, 2034. Current status: Redemption Protocol candidate. At the bottom, stamped in red, holiday clearance authorized. "Sir," Cade said carefully, his voice carrying the weight of a man choosing words like diffusing explosives. "This individual has been separated from service." "This individual," Vance interrupted, "has been deemed suitable for assessment. Her previous status has been reviewed and approved at levels I cannot disclose. Your orders are to conduct standard desert marksmanship evaluation. Results transmitted directly to my command by 0600. Standard evaluation." Cade looked at Noel, who stood perfectly still in the cold. "Tonight. Completion before midnight would be ideal." Vance checked his watch with the gesture of a man who had other appointments, other candidates, other complications waiting in encrypted files. Something in the way he said it made Rhett's instincts fire. Not threat, exactly. Warning. Like this whole situation was a bomb with a timer nobody could see, and forgetting to watch the clock would carry consequences nobody wanted to discuss. "Redemption Protocol," Bishop said to no one in particular. "We're babysitting Army washouts on Christmas Eve?" Noel spoke for the first time. "I requested this evaluation." Her voice was quiet but clear. Midwest accent, Montana, maybe Wyoming. Somewhere with long winters and longer silences. No defensiveness in her tone, just statement of fact. I need this second chance, she continued. You don't have to babysit me, test me. If I qualify, the program continues. If I fail, I walk away. Simple. Bishop opened his mouth. Rhett caught his eye, shook his head once. Bishop closed his mouth. Vance climbed back into the Humvee. Lieutenant Cade, conduct your assessment. The candidate is your responsibility until 0500 extraction. The vehicle rolled back through the gate, leaving them with an impossible situation and a woman who looked like she'd spent her entire life preparing for moments exactly like this. The silence stretched. Desert wind filled it with sand and the distant crackle of Christmas songs from the radio. Cade exhaled slowly, visible breath crystallizing. Gear up, we're running the course. Sir, it's Christmas, Bishop started. I'm aware of the date. Cade's voice hardened slightly, the tone of an officer who'd received orders he didn't like, but would execute anyway because that's what orders meant. Petty Officer Murdoch, get the targets hot. Locke, prep the scoring system. Bishop, weapon check. Someone apparently thinks this matters more than presents. Noelle turned toward the armory. Her footsteps in the sand were lighter than the wind. Rhett watched her go, then looked at the Christmas lights still blinking against the darkness. Something about this felt wrong in a way that had nothing to do with protocol or holiday timing. Something deeper. The kind of wrong that came from watching someone walk toward a test that wasn't really about marksmanship at all. He followed her inside. The ready room smelled like gun oil and instant coffee, and the particular staleness of spaces where men waited for violence. Petty Officer First Class Owen Murdoch sat at a corner table wrapping presents when they entered. Actual presents, wrapped in newspaper because he'd forgotten proper paper before deployment. Gifts for his sons, Jake, 10, and Matt, 8. A tradition he maintained even when the mail wouldn't reach them until February. Even when he wouldn't be there Christmas morning to see their faces. He looked up at the sound of boots, saw Noelle, froze with tape stuck to his fingers. We're running evaluation? He asked Cade. Standard desert marksmanship, Cade replied, pulling up the tablet again, squinting at redactions like they might reveal secrets if he stared hard enough. Someone with stars on their shoulders thinks this needs to happen tonight. Brenna Locke came down from the tower, saw Noelle, and her expression cycled through several stages of disbelief before settling on professional neutrality. She was the only woman on the SEAL team. She understood certain realities about being female in spaces built by and for men. But even she couldn't quite hide the question in her eyes. You Army Rangers? Locke asked. Was, Noelle said. Discharged 6 months ago. What'd you do? Refused a kill order. No shame in Noelle's voice. No pride either. Just fact. Intelligence indicated civilian family in the target building. I didn't take the shot. Insurgent escaped. Killed 12 Marines the following week. Army decided I'd failed my duty. The room went quiet. Intelligence was wrong? Red asked. Noelle met his eyes. Intelligence was wrong. There were civilians, 7 of them, including 3 children under age 5. I was right to refuse. I was still discharged for it. Bishop whistled low. And they want you back? They want to know if I learned my lesson. Something almost like humor touched Noelle's voice. Bitter humor, the kind that came from watching institutions punish you for doing the right thing. Redemption protocol. Second chance for operators who've been separated. Complete the evaluations. Clear the record. Reinstatement possible. Fail, and the discharge stands with full consequences. Court-martial? Murdoch asked. Among other things. Cade set down the tablet. Does the candidate have a preferred call sign, or do we use rank? Noelle is fine. She pulled off her jacket. Underneath, tactical gear properly fitted. Load-bearing vest positioned for quick access. Pouches arranged with the systematic precision of someone who'd learned that fumbling for ammunition in darkness got people killed. This wasn't improvised. This was professional. Rhett studied her more carefully now. The gear told stories. The vest showed wear patterns consistent with months of field use. The holster had been modified for left-hand draw. The knife's sheath sat exactly where it should for someone who'd actually had to draw a blade under stress. Small details that separated operators from pretenders. "You've seen combat," he said, not a question. "Afghanistan, 4 years, Army Ranger Regiment, deployed 3 times. Noelle's hands moved automatically, checking equipment with the unconscious competence of ritual. Marksmanship instructor for 2 of those years. Qualified expert on 12 weapons platforms. Instructor. Bishop's skepticism hadn't entirely vanished, but it had shifted slightly, become more professional curiosity than dismissal. "You teach or you do?" "Both." Noelle looked at him directly. "I taught new Rangers how to survive their first firefight. Then I survived my own. Then I taught more, until I made a choice that ended my career." "Refusing to kill civilians ended your career," Locke said quietly. "That's what you're telling us." "That's what I'm telling you." Cade's jaw tightened. Whatever he'd read in that file, whatever redacted sections contained, this wasn't sitting well. But orders were orders, and encrypted commands from above his clearance level meant he executed or he faced his own consequences. "Staff Sergeant Rhett," Cade said, "you'll spot for the candidate. Your assessment counts." Rhett nodded once. That made sense. He was senior enlisted. 36 years in the teams meant he'd seen every kind of operator, the legitimate and the lucky, the skilled and the simply stubborn. If anyone could evaluate whether Noel belonged here, it was him. Everyone else, standard positions. "We run this clean and professional. She qualifies or she doesn't. Either way, we treat this like any other evaluation." Bishop grabbed his rifle. "Even though it's Christmas Eve and we're testing someone who got kicked out for not following orders?" "Especially because of that," Cade said. They filed out into the cold. The desert waited with the patience of something that had outlasted civilizations and would outlast whatever small human dramas played out on its surface tonight. The range looked like a film set for the world's loneliest war. Sodium lights on portable stands cast harsh pools of illumination across sand that stretched to darkness. Target frames stood at intervals from 300 to 1,000 meters, their silhouettes stark against the black sky. The wind had picked up, sending streamers of dust across the firing line like desert ghosts searching for something they'd lost. Temperature, 26 degrees and dropping. Wind, variable, shifting between southeast and due east, gusting to 18 knots. Humidity, 8%. The kind of conditions that made every shot a negotiation with physics, where calculations had to account for factors invisible to anyone who hadn't spent years learning to read air itself. Rhett set up the M110 semi-automatic sniper system on the primary firing position. Standard SEAL equipment, 7.62 millimeter NATO rounds, effective range of 800 meters, though he'd seen shooters push it further in calm conditions. These were not calm conditions. "Target sequence is randomized," Locke called from the control station, her voice carrying across the range with the clarity of someone who'd learned to project over gunfire. "Mix of static and movers, scoring as aggregate accuracy, emphasis on headshots per protocol." The SEALs would shoot first. 5 shooters, 4 rounds each. Standard evaluation to establish baseline performance. Show the Army Ranger what Navy SEALs considered acceptable. Bishop went first. He'd been shooting since age 12. Qualified expert on every rifle the Navy issued. He settled into position with the ease of 10,000 repetitions. Muscle memory so deep it was closer to reflex than conscious thought. Controlled breathing, sight picture, squeeze. First round, center mass, 400 meters. Clean hit. The target rang like a bell in the cold. Second round, headshot, 500 meters. The target's upper silhouette showed the distinctive punch-through of perfect placement. Third round, moving target, 650 meters, hit, but low. Acceptable combat effectiveness, not perfect. Fourth round, 800 meters, headshot, wind gusting to 17 knots, temperature dropping, and Bishop threaded the round through chaos to find skull. 3 out of 4 headshots, solid performance. Murdoch went next, then Cade, then Locke. Each SEAL putting up numbers that reflected 18 months of training together, learning each other's rhythms, spotting for each other with the shorthand of shared experience. By the time Rhett took his turn, they'd accumulated a total of 18 headshots out of 20 rounds fired, 90% accuracy, well above the 50% qualification standard. The kind of performance that went into official records and made commanders remember your name. Rhett lined up his shots with the cold precision of someone who'd done this in worse conditions. Fallujah rooftops where missing meant civilians died. Afghan ridgelines where wind didn't just affect ballistics, but carried the sound that gave away your position. Places where shooting was less about targets and more about promises. Promises to bring your team home. Promises to stop threats before they materialized. Promises to yourself that you'd never hesitate when it mattered. 4 rounds, 3 headshots, 1 center mass that would have been fatal anyway. 18 out of 20, Locke announced, her voice carrying satisfaction. 90%, that's going in the books. The SEALs exchanged fist bumps. Good shooting on a bad night. The kind of performance that reminded them why they wore the trident, why they stood watch while others slept, why Christmas in the desert mattered less than the standard they maintained. Noelle had been standing outside the light perimeter, warming her hands in her gloves. She'd watched each shooter with the same neutral expression, not reacting to hits or misses, just observing with the systematic attention of someone cataloging data for later use. "Your turn, Captain," Cade said. She walked to the firing line without hurry, didn't stretch, didn't roll her shoulders, didn't go through any of the pre-shot rituals the SEALs used to center themselves. Just approached the weapon, checked the chamber with practiced efficiency, and settled into position behind the M110. Her movements were economical, no wasted motion. Every action served direct purpose. "You need a spotter?" Rhett asked, taking position beside her. "Yes," she glanced at him. "Wind call would help. I'll give you what I see. You make the final decision." She nodded once. Professional acknowledgement between operators. Bishop watched from the side, arms crossed. "We set a 90% baseline, Army. That's your bar." Noel's finger rested alongside the trigger guard, not on the trigger. Safety disciplines so ingrained it was unconscious. She stared down range where targets waited in pools of light and shadow, where wind wrote invisible equations in moving air. From the radio, tiny and distant, "Hark the herald angels sing." "Candidate ready?" Locke asked. Noel's breathing slowed. The same rhythm Rhett had seen in 1,000 shooters. The physiological shift from normal state to what some called the zone and others called combat calm. Heart rate dropping, vision sharpening, the world narrowing to sight picture and breath control, and the precise instant when everything aligned. In the harsh sodium light, Rhett could see her pupils dilate slightly, adapting to darkness, preparing to track targets through shadows. "Ready," she said. Locke keyed the sequence. "Targets hot in 3, 2, 1. The first target illuminated at 450 meters. Static silhouette, chest height, backlit to create clear contrast. Noelle fired. The sound cracked across the desert, and every SEAL stopped breathing. Because the target had no head anymore. Just a hole where the cranial silhouette used to be. Edges punched clean through with the distinctive pattern of perfect shot placement. Headshot. First round. No hesitation. No warm-up. Just immediate, absolute precision. "Jesus," Murdoch whispered. The second target appeared at 600 meters, moving laterally at human running speed. The wind gusted northwest, directly across the firing line, strong enough to push the round 6 inches off course, if not accounted for. Noel adjusted 2 degrees right, led the target half a body length, and fired. The head exploded. "Okay," Bishop said, no longer smiling. His arms had uncrossed. "Okay, that's—" Third target, 750 meters, partially obscured by a barrier simulating urban cover. Only the upper third visible. Wind now gusting from the southeast, swirling in the thermal differential between ground and air that made prediction nearly impossible. Noel waited. 3 seconds, letting the gust pass, reading the pause between chaos, then fired between heartbeats. Headshot. The radio went silent mid-song, like someone had yanked the plug. In the sudden quiet, the only sounds were wind and the distant ping of the target still swaying from impact. Fourth target, 1,000 meters, maximum effective range. Wind at 19 knots and rising. The kind of shot that separated lucky from legitimate, that required not just skill, but understanding of physics most people couldn't visualize. Noel took a breath, held it, fired. For a moment, nothing. The round traveled for nearly 2 seconds. Fall, fighting wind, carrying through cold air that bent its path in ways that required intuition more than calculation. Then the target's head disintegrated. 4 rounds, 4 headshots, all at ranges and conditions that should have made 1 difficult and 3 impossible. Noel stood, safed the weapon, and turned to face them. Her expression hadn't changed. No triumph, no satisfaction, just the same careful neutrality she'd worn since arriving. "Assessment complete?" she asked. Nobody answered. They were all staring at the targets. Cade found his voice first, though it came out rougher than usual. "Yeah, complete." The data didn't lie. Locke pulled up the shot analysis on her tablet, checking the numbers 3 times because they seemed impossible. SEAL team results. Total rounds fired, 20. Headshots, 18. Percentage, 90%. Average time per shot, 8. 3 seconds. Wind adjustment errors, 3. Range effectiveness, degraded beyond 700 meters. Candidate results. Total rounds fired, 4. Headshots, 4. Percentage, 100%. Average time per shot, 5.1 seconds. Wind adjustment errors, 0. Range effectiveness, optimal to maximum range. The numbers sat on the screen like an accusation. "Run it again," Bishop said. His voice had lost its skepticism, replaced by something harder, something that sounded like a man watching the rules he understood get rewritten. "Different weapon." "Already did," Locke said quietly. "Check calibration 3 times. Numbers are solid. Then run it with different conditions." Bishop turned to Cade. "Sir, with respect, this doesn't make sense. She's, what, mid-20s? We've been doing this for years. Combined, our team has more trigger time than she's been alive. The math doesn't work." "The math works fine," Rhett said quietly. He'd been studying the target camera feeds, watching slow-motion replay of Noel's shots. Her form was textbook, breathing control perfect, sight picture disciplined. But that wasn't what held his attention. It was the timing. She fired in the spaces between gusts, threading rounds through windows of opportunity that lasted half a second. Reading wind at night in the desert was like reading invisible handwriting on black paper. You watched dust patterns that barely existed, felt pressure changes too subtle for instruments, tracked the way light diffused through moving air that carried moisture and temperature gradients in 3 dimensions. It took years to develop that instinct, decades sometimes. She did it like breathing. "Different weapon," Cade said, making it an order. "M24. Let's see if this is skill or just familiarity with the M110. They swapped rifles. The M24 was older, heavier, bolt action, required manual chambering between rounds. Muscle memory from the M110 wouldn't transfer cleanly. The trigger pull was different. The recoil pattern was different. The sight picture through the scope carried subtle variations that threw off shooters who'd trained on other platforms. Rhett placed it on the line. 4 more rounds, same target profile. Noel picked up the M24, worked the bolt once to check the action, settled into position. 4 shots, 4 headshots. Slower because bolt action required cycling, but every round found skull with the same mechanical precision. Standing position, Bishop said, edge in his voice now. Not anger exactly, something closer to desperation. The sound of someone watching expertise they'd spent careers building get surpassed by someone who shouldn't be able to do what she was doing. Prone is easy. Let's see standing. Standing shots were exponentially harder. No ground support, full body stabilization required, wind hitting the entire frame instead of just the rifle. Most snipers avoided standing shots except in emergencies, when speed mattered more than precision. Noel stood, brought the rifle to shoulder, fired 4 more rounds, 3 headshots, 1 upper chest. She missed, Bishop said, something like relief in his voice. She didn't miss, Rhett corrected, checking the wind data logged by Locke's instruments. 22-knot gust hit right as she fired. Look at the timing. She compensated enough to keep it center mass. That's not missing. That's saving the shot when conditions went bad. They tried different ranges, different lighting, different target sequences, randomized patterns that should have been impossible to predict. Every time, Noel read the conditions, made her adjustments, and landed shots that defied reasonable expectations for someone her age with her experience level. Finally, Cade called it. Enough. We have our data. Sir, Locke said carefully, this doesn't make sense. Where did she train? Who taught her to shoot like this? Cade checked the file again, though he knew what he'd find. Black bars where answers should be. Above our clearance. She's mid-20s, Bishop insisted. You don't get this good this fast. It's not possible. She's a candidate who shoots better than we do, Cade said. His voice carried the flatness of a man stating facts he didn't like but couldn't deny. That's what goes in the report. Noel stood apart from them now, rifle secured, watching the desert wind move the Christmas lights. Her face showed nothing. No pride in the performance that had just made 5 Navy SEALs question their own expertise. No satisfaction at beating their baseline by impossible margins. Just the same careful blankness she'd worn since arriving, like emotion was a luxury she couldn't afford or had forgotten how to access. Rhett approached her carefully, the way you approach someone who might bolt if crowded. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? He asked. She was quiet for a moment, then, my father. Not an explanation, a simple fact. Your father must have been one hell of an instructor. He was one hell of a lot of things. Something in her voice suggested not all of those things were positive. He taught me that wind doesn't lie if you listen right. Most people don't listen. They calculate, they guess, they use instruments. And you? I listen. She turned to look at him. Because when my father taught me, we didn't have instruments. We had Montana winter and targets at distance, and the understanding that every round mattered. You don't waste ammunition when resupply is 50 miles away and the temperature's 20 below. You learn to make the first shot count. Rhett thought about his own son. Marine lieutenant, 26 years old, killed in Kandahar 2 years ago. He taught his boy to shoot too. Taught him discipline and honor and all the things fathers pass to sons when they hope those sons will carry something forward. His son had been good. Not this good. Nobody was this good at 26 unless something had forged them in fires most people never survived. Your father still teaching? Rhett asked. My father's dead. Noel said it without inflection. Statement of fact, not plea for sympathy. 8 years now. Classified operation. Christmas Day, 2026. They sent a flag and a story that didn't match the dates. I was 18. I've been listening to wind ever since. Christmas Day, 8 years ago. The same way Rhett's son had died, serving something larger, leaving behind people who had to figure out how to keep breathing after the world stopped making sense. "I'm sorry," Rhett said. "Don't be. You didn't kill him." She looked back at the targets, at the evidence of perfect shots under impossible conditions. "He taught me everything I know about shooting, about reading terrain, about surviving when conditions are hostile. I'm here because of what he taught me, and I'm here because I failed to use it the way the Army wanted." "You refused to kill civilians." "I refused to kill a family when intelligence was questionable." She pulled her jacket tighter against the cold. "Turned out I was right. There were civilians, 7 of them. But the insurgent escaped, killed 12 Marines the next week, and the Army decided I'd valued 7 Afghan lives over 12 American ones. Mathematics of war. I failed the equation. You saved 7 innocent people. I got 12 Marines killed." Now emotion crept into her voice. Not much, just enough to show that the blankness was armor, not absence. Those Marines had families, had futures, had people waiting for them to come home. I took that from them because I hesitated, because I second-guessed, because I thought I knew better than intelligence. You did know better. Knowing better doesn't bring them back. Red understood that truth, understood the weight of decisions that got people killed, the way those decisions sat in your chest for years afterward, the particular mathematics of responsibility that never quite balanced. "Is that why you're here?" he asked. "Redemption protocol? You trying to prove you can follow orders now?" Noel met his eyes. "I'm here because this is the only path back to honorable service. I'm here because being dishonorably discharged means I can't work, can't get security clearance, can't do the only thing I've ever been good at. I'm here because my father died serving this country, and I'd like to finish what he started instead of being remembered as the operator who got 12 Marines killed because she had a conscience." The bitterness in that last word was sharp enough to draw blood. "So you'll do what?" Red asked. "Shut off that conscience? Become someone who doesn't question orders?" "I'll learn to question smarter." She turned away. "I should prep for the next phase." "Next phase? You don't think they flew me out here for 4 shots, do you?" Something almost like humor touched her voice. Dark humor. The kind that came from understanding exactly how little you mattered to institutions that moved nations. "This was the easy part. The evaluation to see if I can hit targets. The real test comes after." Before Rhett could respond, Captain Vance's voice crackled over the radio. Cold, precise, carrying the particular timbre of someone about to make everything more complicated. "Lieutenant Cade, we have movement on the perimeter." Everyone froze. "Source?" Cade's voice came back immediately, snapping into combat mode. "Thermal picked up 3 signatures. Northwest quadrant, moving toward the facility. Armed." The word armed changed everything. "Rules of engagement?" Cade asked. "Defend the facility. Candidate is primary asset. Protect at all costs." Noelle's expression didn't change, but Rhett saw her hands slide into her pockets, where a concealed weapon probably waited. "This was the setup," she said quietly. "They wanted to see how I'd perform under real conditions. This is the actual test." "You knew this was coming?" Rhett asked. "I suspected. Standard evaluations don't require holiday clearance codes. Standard evaluations don't happen in the middle of the night with redacted orders." She looked at him. "Everything's a test when you're trying to prove you deserve to survive." The Christmas lights blinked cheerfully in the background, red and green against black sky. Somewhere in Virginia, children were sleeping with dreams of presents and magic and mornings filled with joy. Here they were loading real ammunition for a test that would measure more than marksmanship. The command tent transformed into a combat operations center in 90 seconds flat. Cade pulled up thermal imaging on the main screen. 3 heat signatures moving with tactical spacing, approaching from the northwest, where the fence line met natural terrain features. They'd chosen the darkest approach vector, avoiding the Christmas lights' glow, using shadows like professionals who understood how observation worked. "Range," Cade said, 1,200 meters in closing. Locke's fingers moved across her console with practiced efficiency. Movement patterns suggest training. They're using cover, maintaining intervals, professional spacing. IDs? Negative. No transponders. No communications we can intercept. Gear configuration suggests private military, but that's assessment, not confirmation. Bishop checked his rifle, muscle memory taking over. Could be a drill. Command scheduled a surprise exercise on Christmas Eve while we've got a live candidate on site. This is the test, Murdoch said, watching Noelle. She stood near the map table, absolutely still, studying the thermal feed with the intensity of someone reading a language she'd learned to understand through necessity. Has to be. They want to see her perform under actual pressure. Actual pressure with unidentified armed personnel approaching a military facility? Cade's voice carried the edge of an officer whose orders had just become dangerously unclear. That's not a drill. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Rhett looked at Noelle. Her face showed nothing, but her hands had moved from her pockets. No weapon visible yet, but her stance had shifted. Weight forward. Ready. You knew this was coming, he said. I suspected the evaluation wouldn't stop at marksmanship. She pointed at the screen. Standard assessments don't require facility defense protocols. They told me it was routine qualification. But routine qualifications don't happen with encrypted orders and holiday clearances. This is what they actually want to see. Which is what? How I perform when stakes are real. Cade's radio crackled. Vance's voice, slightly distorted by encryption. Lieutenant Cade, what's your tactical assessment? 3 armed personnel approaching from northwest. Unknown intent. Request clarification on rules of engagement, sir. Static. Then, hostile intent is confirmed. You are authorized for defensive action. Priority 1, protect the candidate. Priority 2, facility security. How you accomplish this is your discretion. The line went dead before Cade could ask the obvious questions. Like how Vance knew intent was hostile. Like why a candidate evaluation required lethal force authorization. Like what the hell kind of operation was actually running here. Unbelievable, Locke muttered. They're using us as supporting cast in her evaluation. The thermal signatures split. One held position at 900 meters, sniper overwatch, classic supporting element. 2 continued advancing, using terrain features with the fluid competence that came from training that cost 6 figures per operator. They're probing defenses, Bishop said, watching the movement patterns, testing response time and deployment protocols. Cade made the call with the decisiveness that kept people alive when hesitation killed. Bishop, Murdoch, northeast positions. Locke, take the tower. Rhett? I'll spot for the candidate, Rhett interrupted. Everyone looked at him. She shoots better than any of us, Rhett said simply. You all saw the numbers. If this is real engagement, we use our best shooter. If it's an evaluation, we give them what they want to see. Either way, she's the correct tactical choice. Cade hesitated. The decision carried weight. Putting an Army Ranger, a dishonorably discharged Army Ranger, in primary shooter position, while Navy SEALs provided support inverted every hierarchy that mattered. It would raise questions, generate reports, follow careers. But Rhett was right. The numbers didn't lie. Candidate, Cade said, turning to Noelle. You're comfortable with live engagement under these parameters? Noelle pulled off her jacket. Underneath, tactical vest already rigged. Magazine pouches positioned for reload speed. Sidearm holstered left hand. This wasn't improvised preparation. This was someone who dressed for combat before arriving, who'd known or suspected this moment was coming. Yes, sir, she said. Priority targets? Sniper first, she answered immediately. No hesitation. Pure tactical assessment delivered with the confidence of someone who'd run these calculations before. Eliminate Overwatch, ground team loses coordination. They become reactive instead of tactical. We control the engagement tempo. Cade nodded slowly. Correct assessment. Rhett, get her positioned. Everyone else, defensive perimeter. If they get inside 500 meters, we engage with prejudice. They moved. The primary sniper nest was a reinforced position with sandbag walls and clear sightlines to the northwest. Someone had built it properly, accounting for backblast, minimizing silhouette, providing cover from multiple approach vectors. Professional work. Rhett set up the night vision spotter scope while Noel assembled the M110 with movements so practiced they looked choreographed. Every action flowed into the next. Magazine seated, bolt checked, optic verified. The ritual of preparation that separated living operators from dead ones. "You've done this before," Rhett said, adjusting his scope. "Not exactly this." She settled into position, checking her breathing, finding the rhythm that steadied heart rate. But close enough. The thermal feed showed the hostile snipers settling into position at 875 meters. Partially concealed behind rock formation, good defilade, professional selection of terrain. Whoever they were, they understood fieldcraft. "Wind," Noel said. Rhett checked his instruments. 16 knots northwest, gusting to 19. Temperature 21 degrees Fahrenheit and dropping. Pressure steady. Mirage minimal, clean air between you and target. She made her adjustments. Tiny movements of the scope's turrets. Elevation, windage, the precise corrections that separated hits from misses at this range. Her hands were steady, no tremor, no hesitation. "Target acquired," she said quietly. Through his scope, Rhett could see the hostile sniper's thermal signature. Professional position, good concealment. Whoever had set up this evaluation had hired competent role players or pulled from actual operator pools. This wasn't amateur theater. "Firing solution confirmed," Rhett said. "You have the shot." Noel's breathing slowed. In, out, long exhale. The physiological shift he'd seen 1,000 times in 1,000 shooters. Heart rate dropping toward 50 beats per minute. Vision tunneling. The world reducing to sight picture and trigger press and the mathematics of ballistics. She whispered something, barely audible. Some legends are forged when the world is celebrating. Then she fired. The hostile sniper went down without sound. Through the thermal scope, Rhett watched the heat signature collapse behind the rock formation. One moment, a person. Next moment, a body. The transition happened in the space between heartbeats. "Target neutralized," he confirmed. Noel was already tracking. No pause for confirmation. No moment of satisfaction. Just immediate transition to the next threat. The way combat had taught her. You didn't celebrate hits until everyone who wanted you dead was no longer capable of making that happen. The two advancing hostiles had frozen at the sound of the shot. Professional discipline. Realizing their overwatch was gone, their supporting element eliminated. They were trained enough to understand what that meant. They split. One broke left toward the vehicle depot, the other right toward the eastern fence line. Combat spacing abandoned for pure speed. Trying to flank, trying to get close enough that long-range precision wouldn't matter. Trying to turn Noel's advantage into liability through aggressive movement. "Left target," Noel said. "Range 680 meters in closing." Rhett tracked. Wind shifted east. 12 knots steady. He's moving at... She fired. The hostile dropped mid-stride, momentum carrying him forward into a tumbling fall across sand. He didn't get up, didn't move, just became another thermal signature cooling in the desert night. "Right target changing direction," Locke's voice came over comms. Calm, professional, feeding information from her elevated position in the tower. "Heading for the eastern bunker. If he gets behind that wall..." Noel was already adjusting. The target was running serpentine now. Evasive maneuvers. Professional training showing through. The kind of movement drilled into operators who knew they were being hunted by someone competent. Range 520 meters, closing fast. Another few seconds and he'd have hard cover. Concrete walls thick enough to stop any round Noel was firing. But he had to cross an open space. 20 feet of exposure. No cover, no concealment, just speed and hope, and the prayer that the shooter tracking him would miss. Noelle waited. Rhett watched her. No tension in her shoulders. No rush. Just patience colder than the desert night. The kind of calm that came from understanding exactly how long 20 feet took to cross at combat sprint. Exactly how wind affected a round at this range. Exactly where to place the shot so the target ran into the bullet instead of the bullet chasing the target. The hostile committed to the sprint. She led him by 3 feet, accounting for his speed, accounting for the shifting wind, accounting for the fraction of a second it would take the round to travel 500 meters. Fired. The round caught him mid-leap. One moment running, next moment falling, physics taking over where intent had failed. He hit the sand hard, skidded, and didn't move again. All hostiles down, Cade confirmed over comms. Sweep teams verify. Lock, maintain overwatch. If this is more than 3, I want to know before they're in effective range. Bishop and Murdoch moved out, weapons ready, clearing toward the fallen signatures with the systematic caution of men who'd seen enough to know that down didn't always mean dead. Rhett kept his scope on the field, checking for additional movement. Thermal showed nothing but cooling bodies and the ambient heat patterns of desert at night. 3 threats, 3 shots, 3 kills. Noelle saved her weapon and sat back. In the harsh light of the compound, Rhett could see her face properly now. Still pale, still calm, but something in her eyes had changed. Not satisfaction, more like recognition. This was what she'd been built for. This was the moment all that training crystallized into purpose. "You okay?" he asked. 3 confirmed kills, she said. "So yes, I'm okay." Her voice carried no emotion, just tactical assessment. 3 threats eliminated, mission accomplished, moving to next phase. The mechanical detachment that kept operators functional when normal humans would break. Bishop's voice crackled over comms. "Boss, you need to see this." 5 minutes later, they stood around the 3 bodies. Not bodies, training dummies. Sophisticated ones. Thermal signatures powered by heating elements that mimicked human body temperature. Remote operation allowing movement that looked organic through night vision. Professional-grade equipment, the kind that cost more than most people earned in a year. "It was a drill after all," Locke said, holstering her sidearm. "No." Noelle knelt beside the nearest dummy, examining where her round had impacted. Perfect headshot, even on a remote-controlled target. "It was a test. They needed to know I could perform under stress. Real stress. You don't get that shooting paper targets." Murdoch pointed at the dummy's gear. "This is professional equipment. Military-grade thermal simulation. Someone funded this setup. Someone with serious resources." Bishop picked up the remote receiver from the sniper position. Operated from somewhere off-site. Probably Vance watching the whole thing from a command center, running these like video game characters. Cade's radio crackled. Vance's voice, carrying satisfaction like a blade. "Assessment complete. Results exceed parameters. Candidate has demonstrated required capabilities under combat conditions. Well done, Lieutenant. An excellent shooting candidate." Noelle stood. "Thank you, sir. Your transport will arrive at 0500. Until then, you're released to facility discretion." Vance out. Released to facility discretion. Like she was equipment being powered down after use. A tool that had performed its function and could now be stored until needed again. Rhett looked at his watch. 0147, Christmas Day. While families across the country slept peacefully, a 26-year-old woman had just killed, or simulated killing, 3 targets to prove her worth to people who'd never acknowledged her name in official records. "You hungry?" he asked her. She blinked like the question didn't compute. "What?" "It's Christmas. We've got hot food in the mess tent. Not great, but better than MREs. I should prep my gear for extraction." "Your gear's prepped. Transport isn't here for 3 hours. Rhett gestured toward the tent where warm light spilled from the entrance. Come eat. The rest of the team added their voices. We've got pie, Murdoch said. Real pie. My wife sent it. Apple. Somehow still mostly intact after shipping. And coffee that doesn't taste like motor oil, Locke added. Mostly. Noelle looked at them like they were speaking a language she'd once known but forgotten. Why? Because you just saved our hypothetical asses in a drill we didn't see coming, Bishop said. His earlier skepticism had transformed into something closer to respect. And because it's Christmas, and nobody should be alone on Christmas, not even candidates being evaluated by shadow programs. She hesitated. For the first time since arriving, uncertainty crossed her face. Genuine human emotion breaking through the tactical mask. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. Do what? Be around people who aren't testing me. Rhett felt something crack in his chest. The same thing that had cracked 2 years ago when they'd handed him a flag and told him his son wasn't coming home. The recognition of someone carrying damage they shouldn't have to carry alone. Come on, he said. We'll figure it out together. They walked to the mess tent, Noelle in the center of the group. The Christmas lights still blinked overhead, reflected in her eyes like stars she'd learned to navigate by, but never wished upon. The mess tent held warmth the desert couldn't provide. A space heater hummed in the corner, fighting the cold with the stubborn faith of machinery that refused to acknowledge impossible odds. The coffee pot burbled, producing something that resembled coffee if you didn't think too hard about what coffee was supposed to taste like. Someone had hung stockings on the wall. Empty ones, because nobody had thought to fill them before deployment. The gesture mattered more than contents ever could. Murdoch brought out the pie his wife had sent. Apple, somehow still mostly intact after shipping. He cut slices with his field knife, serving them on paper plates with ceremony that made the simple meal matter. Noel sat at the end of the table, pie untouched, watching the others with careful attention. Not hungry? Locke asked. I don't remember the last time I had pie. Then you're definitely eating it. Murdoch pushed the plate closer. She took a bite. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile, but close. It's good, she said. They shared photos. Murdoch's sons, Bishop's daughter, 4 years old, wearing reindeer antlers, Locke's family ranch, Cade's newborn, normal lives, normal Christmases, the world Noelle protected but couldn't fully inhabit. You have anyone? Locke asked gently. Noelle shook her head. Not anymore. Christmas music played faintly through static. Cade came in carrying a small box. He set it in front of Noelle. We figured, he said, clearing his throat slightly, since you're here on Christmas, you should have something. She stared at the box like it might explode. I don't understand. It's a present. You open it. I didn't get you anything. You saved our hypothetical asses in a drill we didn't see coming. That's present enough. Bishop gestured to the box. Go on. With careful hands, the same hands that had just put 3 perfect shots on moving targets, she unwrapped it. Inside was a patch, custom made. It showed a Christmas tree with crosshairs where the star should be. Underneath, stitched in careful letters, Desert Knoll. She held the patch like it was made of glass. Her hands trembled slightly, the first physical sign of emotion breaking through tactical control. It's not much, Rhett said, but it seemed right. I don't need presents, Noelle said, but her voice cracked on the last word. Nobody needs presents, Murdoch said, but everybody deserves them, especially on Christmas. She pressed the patch to her chest, over her heart. Thank you. Cade sat across from her. You want to know the truth? We're debating whether to report what we saw tonight. Sir, your situation, what they're doing with you, this redemption protocol. He leaned forward. I don't know what's in those redacted sections of your file. I don't know what you did that got you discharged beyond refusing an illegal kill order. But I know manipulation when I see it. The newspaper wrapping that came with Vance's supply manifest, You notice the date? Noel's face went carefully blank. What date? Murdoch smoothed out the newspaper he'd been using. They'd all seen it, but not registered. December 25th, 2026. The exact date Noel's father had died 8 years ago. Her face went white. Actually white, like blood had drained to somewhere it could be more useful than maintaining color and skin. Where did you get this newspaper? Her voice was very quiet. It came with Vance's delivery manifest, Cade said, wrapped around supplies he brought for your evaluation. I thought it was random, but there are no coincidences in classified operations, are there? No, Noel said. There aren't. The implications settled like fallout. Someone had chosen that specific newspaper edition. Someone had wrapped supplies in the exact date that marked her greatest loss. Someone was sending a message, or running a test, or manipulating psychological triggers with the precision of people who understood exactly which buttons to push. They're using your grief, Rhett said quietly. They're testing how I handle emotional triggers under operational stress. Noelle set down the patch, her hands now perfectly steady. The trembling was gone, replaced by something harder. Everything is data. My shooting performance, my tactical decisions, my emotional responses. They're building a profile to determine if I can function under maximum psychological pressure. That's not training, Locke said. That's torture with extra steps. That's redemption protocol. Noelle looked at each of them. You think I didn't know? You think I walked into this blind? I knew what I was signing up for. I knew they'd use everything, my father's death, my discharge, my guilt about those 12 Marines. I knew they'd manipulate every psychological vulnerability I have. I signed up anyway. Why? Bishop asked. Because it's the only path back to honorable service. Because being dishonorably discharged means I can't work in the only field I'm trained for. Because my father died serving this country, and I'd like to finish what he started, instead of being remembered as the operator who got people killed because she had a conscience. The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut. So you'll what? Red asked. Let them turn you into someone who doesn't question orders? Someone who shoots when told without thinking about 7 civilians in the building? I'll learn to think faster, Noel stood. I should prep for Phase 2. What's Phase 2? Murdoch's phone buzzed before she could answer. He glanced at it, expression softening. My wife just sent something. From Jake. He turned the screen toward Noel. A child's drawing in crayon. A stick figure soldier, clearly female, holding a rifle, standing in front of a family. Text in 10-year-old handwriting. For the soldier lady Dad is helping. You're my hero because you chose right over easy. Noel stared at the drawing. At the simple faith of a child who believed heroes existed. Who believed choosing conscience made someone worth admiring. Can I keep this? Her voice was quiet. It's yours, Murdoch said. He drew it for you after hearing me talk about the evaluation. She studied the drawing like it held tactical intelligence. This was what she'd been trying to protect. Not programs, not redemption. Children who believed right mattered more than easy. Thank you, she said. Tell Jake his drawing matters more than any score. Before Murdoch could respond, Cade's radio crackled. Vance's voice, cold as the desert night. Lieutenant Cade, new assessment parameters have been transmitted to your secure terminal. Phase 2 authorization confirmed. Begin when ready. Cade pulled up his tablet. His face went carefully neutral, the expression of an officer reading orders he couldn't believe, but couldn't refuse. Sir? Red asked. Cade's voice came out flat. Phase 2 assessment, above my clearance to question. What are the parameters? Cade looked at Noel. Something in his eyes, pity maybe, or recognition of injustice he was powerless to prevent. The candidate is to eliminate a compromised friendly, he said quietly. Simulated engagement, training rounds, test of operational detachment under morally complex scenarios. The tent went silent except for the space heater's hum and the distant crackle of Christmas music. "Who's the target?" Bishop asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. Cade's eyes found Rhett. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rhett. Simulated kill shot. Head or chest, candidate's discretion. Noelle's face showed nothing, but her hands had curled into fists. "You're ordering her to shoot me," Rhett said. Statement, not question. "I'm ordering her to demonstrate operational detachment, training round, simulated engagement, no actual harm." Cade's voice carried the hollowness of someone reciting words they didn't believe. "Those are the parameters." "And if she refuses?" Locke asked. "Then she fails the assessment. Dishonorable discharge stands. Court-martial proceeds for the original insubordination charge, plus failure to complete redemption protocol requirements." Vance's voice came through the radio again. "The candidate has 3 minutes to comply. Clock starts now." Noelle stood perfectly still, looking at Red, looking at the man who'd spotted for her, who'd treated her like an operator instead of a problem, who'd shared the story of his own dead son and created space for her to be something other than a weapon being tested. Looking at the man who'd shown her kindness in a place where kindness didn't exist. Looking at Jake's drawing, at a child who believed choosing right made someone a hero. "This is the real test," she said quietly. "Not the shooting. This. Whether I'll follow orders that violate conscience. Whether I learn my lesson." Rhett met her eyes. "What lesson is that?" "That obedience matters more than morality. That following orders is more important than being right. That the 12 Marines who died because I hesitated, that their blood teaches one simple truth. Shoot when told, think later." "You believe that?" "I believed it enough to come here, to volunteer for this program, to think maybe the Army was right and I was wrong." She looked at the Desert Noel patch on the table, at Jake's drawing. "But they just made a mistake." "What mistake?" "They gave me 3 minutes to think about it." Something almost like a smile touched her lips. 3 minutes is a long time when you've spent 8 years thinking about one choice. She picked up a training weapon from the equipment rack, loaded the marking round, the kind that left paint instead of holes, that simulated kills for training without actual death. Raised it toward Red. The tent held its breath. Her finger rested on the trigger. Sight picture aligned, perfect form, the same mechanical precision she'd shown all night. Rhett didn't flinch, didn't move, just stood there, watching her with the calm of a man who'd made peace with harder things than this. "Your father taught you to protect innocence," he said quietly. "I'm betting he also taught you that some orders aren't lawful. Some orders are tests to see if you're still human. You pass those tests by failing them." Noelle's hands were steady. "And if I fail? If I refuse? Then you prove you're your father's daughter, and I'll be proud to write that in my evaluation." She held position for another 3 seconds, then shifted aim 30 degrees right and fired. The training round hit Vance's communication equipment mounted on the command tent exterior. Direct impact. The radio exploded in a shower of sparks and plastic, going dead with the finality of something that wouldn't be quickly repaired. Noelle lowered the weapon. "I choose conscience. Again, court-martial me if you want." The silence was absolute. Then Rhett started clapping. Slow, deliberate applause that echoed in the tent like thunder. "That," he said, "is what an operator looks like." The others joined in. Bishop, Murdoch, Locke, even Cade, who should have been reporting insubordination, but instead was fighting something that looked suspiciously like a smile. From outside, they heard Vance's voice shouting, muffled by distance, but clear in anger. He couldn't radio anymore. Noelle had made sure of that. "You just destroyed a superior officer's equipment," Cade said. "I eliminated the source of compromised orders, sir." Noelle's voice was perfectly professional. "You said operational discretion. I exercised discretion. The threat to team cohesion was that radio and the orders coming through it. I neutralized the threat." Cade shook his head slowly. They're going to crucify you for this. They were always going to crucify me. At least now I get to choose which hill I die on. Vance appeared in the tent entrance, face red with fury. You failed. You refused a direct order. This is insubordination. This is an illegal order, sir, Red interrupted. Stepped forward, putting himself between Vance and Noel. Ordering a candidate to shoot a friendly, even simulated, violates training protocols, violates rules of engagement, violates basic standards of ethical assessment. You have no authority here, Staff Sergeant. Actually, sir, I do. Rhett's voice went cold. Professional. The tone of someone about to end a conversation permanently. I'm not just her spotter. I'm her evaluator, the real one. Inspector General's office sent me undercover 6 months ago to investigate redemption protocol for ethics violations. Vance's face went from red to white. I've been documenting everything, Rhett continued. 4 prior candidates, all failed your loyalty test, all now in black site prisons for refusing to shoot friendlies. Redemption protocol isn't rehabilitation. It's a pipeline for creating operators without conscience. And as of 0320, the Inspector General has full operational authority over this facility. He pulled credentials from his vest, real ones. Inspector General Investigation Badge. Authorization codes that made Vance's special access program look like Neighborhood Watch. Check your encrypted channels, Captain, if you still had a working radio. Cade pulled up his tablet. Confirmed. Override codes valid. Chain of command transferred. You're under investigation, Rhett said to Vance, for ethics violations, for illegal assessment protocols, for psychological manipulation of candidates. And as of this moment, Captain Winter is released from redemption protocol pending full review. Noel's eyes widened slightly. Captain? Your discharge is under review. Pending my investigation findings, reinstatement is likely. With promotion to captain for time served and unjust separation. Rhett looked at her. You were right. Intelligence was wrong. You saved 7 civilians. The 12 Marines died because intelligence failed, not because you hesitated. That's going in my report. I don't understand, Noel said. You were bait, Rhett said gently. Best bait we've ever used. Smart enough to recognize manipulation. Strong enough to resist it. Perfect candidate to expose what redemption protocol really is. You used me. Yes, I'm sorry for that, but I do it again. Because 23 other operators are getting released from black site prisons because of what you just proved. That conscience isn't weakness. That questioning illegal orders isn't insubordination. That being right matters more than being obedient. Vance made for the exit. Bishop stepped in front of him. Sir, you're confined to facility pending IG investigation. Lieutenant Cade's orders. You have no authority. Check the tablet, Captain, Cade said. His voice carried satisfaction like a weapon. Staff Sergeant Rhett has full authority, and I'm happy to enforce his investigation. Very happy. Vance was led away by Bishop and Murdoch, still protesting, still insisting he'd done nothing wrong, still not understanding that the game had changed the moment Noel shot the radio instead of Rhett. Noel sat down heavily. The adrenaline was wearing off now, leaving exhaustion in its wake. She looked at the desert Noel patch, at Jake's drawing, at Rhett, at the team who'd surrounded her with protection she hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. What happens now? She asked. Now, Rhett said, you finish your pie, then you sleep, then tomorrow, today technically, it's 03:45 Christmas morning, you start the process of getting your life back. Just like that? Just like that. She picked up the fork, took another bite of pie. This time tears ran down her face. Silent, unstoppable. 8 years of grief and guilt and grinding determination, finally finding release. Nobody looked away. Nobody told her to stop. They just sat with her while she cried, while Christmas music played through static, while the desert night slowly surrendered to dawn. Outside, the first hint of light touched the eastern horizon. Morning was coming. For the first time in 8 years, Noah Winter believed she might actually see it. The encrypted message arrived at 03:55. Cade's tablet chimed with a particular tone that meant secure communications, the kind that routed through channels most people didn't know existed. He glanced at the screen, frowned, then looked at Noelle with an expression that suggested the night's complications weren't finished. "It's for you," he said. Noelle set down her pie. The tears had stopped, leaving her face clean in a way that had nothing to do with water. She took the tablet, read the message. Her expression went carefully blank, the tactical mask sliding back into place. "What is it?" Red asked. She turned the screen so they could see. "Encryption level. Cosmic top secret. To Winter, Noelle E. From Winter, James R. LCOL, USA message. Chimney Rock, 0600. Come alone, we need to talk. Dad." The tent went silent except for the space heater's hum. "Your father's dead," Bishop said carefully. "You told us 8 years ago. Christmas Day, 2026. "That's what they told me." Noelle's voice was flat. "Flag and story that didn't match the dates. Closed casket. No body viewing. Classified operation details. I was 18. I believed them." "You think this is real?" Locke asked. "I think someone wants me to think it's real." Noelle checked the encryption headers with the systematic attention of someone trained in communication security. "Routing is legitimate. Cosmic top secret clearance is valid. Message origin traces to channels only active field operations use. Either my father's alive or someone with access to his credentials is running an operation using his identity." Rhett took the tablet, verified what she'd said. The encryption was genuine. Military channels, not civilian. The kind of communication infrastructure that cost millions to maintain and only existed for operations that officially didn't happen. "Chimney Rock," he said. "That's 20 miles north, remote desert formation. Good sniper terrain, perfect for an ambush, or perfect for a conversation someone doesn't want recorded." Noelle stood, started checking her gear with automatic efficiency. "I'm going." "The hell you are," Bishop said. "This is obviously a trap. Vance's people trying to isolate you, take you somewhere without witnesses." "Vance is in custody," Cade reminded him. "Vance has resources we don't know about. Redemption Protocol didn't run on just his authority. Someone higher up funded this program, someone who might not appreciate their operation being exposed." Bishop turned to Noelle. "You go out there alone, you might not come back." "I'm aware of the tactical risks." Noelle finished checking her sidearm, holstered it with practiced ease. "I'm going anyway." "Why?" Murdoch asked. "Because if there's any chance my father is alive, I need to know. I've spent 8 years believing he was dead. 8 years mourning. 8 years trying to honor a memory." Her voice carried the weight of every one of those years. "If he's alive, I deserve to know. If this is manipulation, I deserve to confront whoever's using his name. Either way, I'm not walking away from this." Rhett understood. He'd spent 2 years knowing his son was dead, knowing there was no coming back, no second chances, no miraculous resurrections. If someone had offered him even the possibility of seeing his boy again, he'd have walked into obvious traps without hesitation. Some things mattered more than tactical wisdom. "Then I'm coming with you," he said. "No," Noelle met his eyes. "The message said come alone. If this is real, if he's really alive and really wants to talk, then showing up with backup ends the conversation before it starts. If it's a trap, then one person in danger is better than 2. "You're not going alone into hostile terrain on Christmas morning," Rhett said. "Not happening. Staff Sergeant, with respect, you don't have authority to stop me. Your investigation gave me civilian status pending review. I'm not under military orders anymore." She was right. Technically, legally, frustratingly right. Then take comms gear, Locke said, pulling equipment from the rack. Encrypted radio, GPS tracker, panic button. If things go bad, we're 15 minutes out. Hit the button. We come running with everything we have. Noelle accepted the equipment. Let Locke help her rig it properly. The two women working in the quiet efficiency of professionals who understood that gear failures killed people. Rules of engagement if you don't check in? Kate asked. If I'm not back by 0800, assume hostile contact and extract. Noelle pulled on her jacket, checking that the comms gear was concealed but accessible. Don't come looking before that. If this is real, I need time. If it's not real, I need you positioned to respond, not walking into the same trap. You're sure about this? Red asked one more time. Noelle picked up the Desert Noel patch from the table, tucked it into her vest pocket over her heart, folded Jake's drawing carefully, and placed it beside the patch. I'm sure. She walked to the door, paused, looked back at them. Thank you. For the pie, for the patch, for treating me like an operator instead of a problem. Whatever happens out there, I want you to know, tonight mattered. You mattered. Then she was gone, footsteps disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness. Rhett moved to follow anyway. Cade caught his arm. Let her go, Cade said quietly. She's right. Some things people need to face alone. She's walking into a potential ambush. She's walking toward potential closure. There's a difference. Cade pulled up the GPS tracker on his tablet. A small dot moving north, steady and determined. We'll track her. We'll be ready. But we let her have this. Rhett watched the dot move across the screen. Watched it trace a path through desert that had swallowed civilizations and would outlast whatever small human drama played out on its surface this Christmas morning. If she dies out there, he said quietly, I'm ending redemption protocol with extreme prejudice. If she dies out there, Cade replied, you'll have to get in line. The desert held its secrets close. Noelle drove the facility jeep north on roads that barely qualified as roads, more like suggestions carved into sand by people who'd passed through and left faint traces of their passage. The headlights cut tunnels through darkness that was finally, slowly, surrendering to dawn. 0530, 30 minutes until sunrise. 30 minutes until she'd find out if the last 8 years had been built on truth or manipulation. Chimney Rock rose against the lightning sky like a stone finger pointing at heaven or warning heaven to stay back. Natural formation, sandstone carved by wind and time into a shape that suggested human architecture but predated humanity by millions of years. Remote, defensible, the kind of terrain that favored whoever arrived first in position properly. She parked the jeep a quarter-mile out, approached on foot, moving with the tactical awareness that had kept her alive through 4 years of Afghanistan deployments. Cover and concealment, sight lines, potential ambush positions, every step calculated, every pause deliberate. The comms gear sat silent in her vest. GPS tracker broadcasting her position to the facility. Panic button within easy reach. She was as prepared as preparation allowed for situations that couldn't be prepared for. Chimney Rock's base held shadows that dawn hadn't reached yet. Natural cover, good concealment, perfect for someone waiting. No! The voice came from her right, not loud, just her name, spoken with the particular inflection of someone who'd said it 1,000 times before. Someone who'd taught her to pronounce her own name properly, who'd chosen it because she'd been born Christmas Day 26 years ago. She turned. The man who emerged from shadow was in his 50s, weathered face that mapped years of field service and decisions that left marks no amount of time could erase. Beard, graying, grown out for cover or neglect, or both. Multicam fatigues worn properly, not costume, but uniform. Eyes that held the same winter gray as hers. Lieutenant Colonel James Winter, Ranger, Classified Operations Specialist, dead 8 years. Except he wasn't dead. He stood 20 feet away, hands visible and empty, Posture non-threatening. The stance of someone approaching a spooked animal or a daughter who had every reason to shoot first and verify identity later. "It's me," he said quietly. "I can prove it if you need proof. The scar on your left knee from when you were 7. You fell off the porch chasing the cat we called Ghost. I carried you to the hospital. You didn't cry the whole way. I was proud and terrified in equal measure." Noel's hand hadn't moved to her weapon. Hadn't moved at all. She stood frozen, looking at a ghost made flesh, trying to reconcile 8 years of grief with a man who breathed in front of her. "You're alive," she said. "I'm alive. They told me you were dead. They needed you to believe that. I needed you to believe that." He took one careful step closer. "I'm sorry, God, Noel, I'm so sorry." "Don't," her voice cracked. "Don't apologize, not yet. Not until you explain why I spent 8 Christmases mourning you. Why I joined the Rangers because I thought I was honoring your memory. Why I got discharged and court-martialed and thrown into redemption protocol because I was trying to be the operator you taught me to be." James's face showed pain, real pain, the kind that came from watching damage you'd caused and couldn't undo. "They approached me 2 years into deep cover, said they had a program that could clear your record, restore your honor, give you second chance. I thought I was helping. You thought wrong." Noel's hands curled into fists. "They manipulated me, used my grief, used your death, your fake death, to control me. Made me believe earning redemption meant shutting off my conscience. And you approved it. You gave them permission to destroy what was left of your daughter." "I didn't know about the manipulation. I swear I didn't know about the psychological testing, the newspaper with the death date, the loyalty tests. They told me it was standard evaluation, training, and assessment. When I learned the truth, what redemption protocol actually was, I broke cover to warn you." "Broke cover?" Noel looked at him. "You risked your mission, your operation, whatever classified work you've been doing for 8 years. You risked it to warn me. You're my daughter. There is no mission more important than that." The words should have meant something, should have softened the anger, eased the betrayal. But they sat hollow because if that were true, truly true, he'd have made different choices 8 years ago. "What's your mission?" she asked. "I can't tell you that. Can't or won't. Both." James's voice carried the weight of someone caught between obligations that couldn't coexist. "It's classified above your clearance. It's ongoing. It matters. I can't compromise it, even for this." "Then why are you here?" "Because I needed you to know I'm alive. Because I needed to know you survived redemption protocol. Because," he paused, "because I'm your father and I failed you, and I wanted to see your face one more time before I disappear back into the dark." Noel studied him, looking for lies, looking for manipulation, looking for any sign that this was another test, another evaluation, another way redemption protocol was measuring her responses. But all she saw was a man who looked tired, who looked old in ways that had nothing to do with years and everything to do with choices that accumulated weight until carrying them required strength most people didn't have. "Do you know what they did to me tonight?" she asked quietly. "No. They made me shoot training rounds at the people who'd shown me kindness. They wrapped presents in newspaper from the day you died. They tested every psychological vulnerability I have to see if I'd break." She pulled out Jake's drawing, unfolded it. "A 10-year-old drew this for me, called me a hero because I chose right over easy. That child understands more about honor than the program you approved." James looked at the drawing. Something crumbled in his expression. "Did you break?" he asked quietly. "No, I chose conscience over obedience. Again. Just like the choice that got me discharged. I shot the radio instead of shooting the man who'd been decent to me." Something like pride crossed James's face. "Your mother would be proud. Don't bring her into this. She actually died. Car accident when I was 16. Real death, real grief, no resurrection 8 years later." The words hit like bullets. James flinched. I deserve that, he said. You deserve worse than that. You deserve... Noel stopped, took a breath. What do you want from me? Why am I really here? Because I wanted to give you a choice. What choice? James gestured to the desert around them. Come with me, off the grid. Montana backcountry. We disappear. Leave the military, leave redemption protocol, leave all of it behind. Start over, be father and daughter again. Run away. Build a life that's ours instead of theirs. Noel was quiet for a long moment. The sky was lighter now, dawn coming fast, the way it did in deserts where nothing blocked the sun's approach. And your mission, she asked, ends today if you come with me. I'll burn my cover, compromise my operation, accept whatever consequences come. You're more important. Am I? Because 8 years ago, I wasn't. 8 years ago, the mission was more important than telling your daughter you were alive. 8 years ago, I made the wrong choice. And now you're asking me to make a choice. Run with you or go back alone. Noel looked at him. That's not really a choice. That's manipulation. You're offering me the thing I wanted most, my father back, in exchange for me giving up everything I built, everything I fought for. You've built a dishonorable discharge in trauma. I built integrity. She pulled out the Desert Noel patch. I've built this, a reminder that I can survive winters, that I can be lethal and still choose right over convenient. I've built relationships with people who treated me like an operator when everyone else treated me like a problem. James looked at the patch. I taught you to survive winters. You taught me to shoot. Rhett taught me when to shoot and when to stand down. There's a difference. Rhett. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rhett, SEAL, Inspector General, Investigator. The man who spent tonight evaluating whether I could resist the same manipulation you approved. Noel tucked the patch away. He lost his son 2 years ago. Marine Lieutenant, Kandahar. He knows what it's like to lose someone who mattered. He treated me like a person instead of an asset. And you're going back to him. I'm going back to people who deserve my loyalty more than you do right now. The words hung in the desert air. Final. Irreversible. The kind of truth that changed relationships permanently. James nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? Because I don't think you do. Noel's voice carried steel now. You're asking me to choose between you and my integrity. You're asking me to run instead of fight. You're asking me to become someone who abandons obligations when they get hard. And you're doing it because you think I'm still the 18-year-old who believed her father was dead. I'm not that person anymore. That person died somewhere between Afghanistan and tonight. Who are you now? Someone who finishes what she starts. Noel pulled out her comms gear, checked the time. 05:55. I'm going back to the facility. I'm testifying against redemption protocol. I'm clearing my name through official channels, not by running. I'm restoring my honor the right way. They'll fight you. They'll bury you in bureaucracy and redactions and institutional resistance. Then I'll fight back, but I'll fight with integrity. James reached into his vest, pulled out dog tags, old ones, worn, his own tags from years of service. Your mother gave these to me when I enlisted. She said they'd bring me home safe. They did, for a long time. He held them out. I want you to have them. Noel looked at the tags, didn't take them. Keep them, she said. Earn the right to give them to me. When you finish your mission, when you choose family over classified operations, then give them to me. When you can look me in the eye and say you prioritize your daughter over your duty, then I'll take them. That could be months, could be a year. I waited 8 years believing you were dead. I can wait longer knowing you're alive. She turned toward the Jeep. Finish your mission, Dad. Do it right. Do it with honor. Then come find me. I'll be at Fort Bragg if they reinstate me, teaching the next generation of Rangers. You'll know where I am. The question is whether you'll choose to find me. Noel, wait. She stopped, didn't turn around. I love you, James said. I never stopped loving you. I love you too, Noel said quietly. But love isn't enough to fix this. Actions fix this. Choices fix this. Proving that family matters more than missions, that fixes this. She walked to the Jeep, started the engine, drove away without looking back. In the rearview mirror, she watched her father become smaller, a figure standing alone in the desert dawn, a ghost choosing whether to stay dead or fight for resurrection. The choice was his now. She'd made hers. The facility appeared on the horizon just as the sun cleared the eastern mountains. Full daylight, Christmas morning. The lights on the observation tower looked pale and unnecessary in natural light, but they still blinked with stubborn faith. Noel parked the Jeep and found the entire team waiting, armed, ready, positioned for rapid response if she'd hit the panic button. Red approached first. "You're okay." "I'm okay." She pulled off her jacket. The morning was already warming, the way desert mornings did when the sun had clear access to sand. "It was my father. He's alive." Deep cover operation. Ongoing. Classified. And I told him to finish his mission. Told him to come find me when he's ready to prioritize family over duty. Noel looked at Rhett. "He offered me escape. Off the grid. Montana wilderness. Father-daughter fresh start." "You turned him down." "I turned him down." She pulled out the Desert Noel patch, looked at it in daylight. The stitching was careful, professional, made with hands that understood the importance of details. Because running doesn't fix anything. Running is just another way of letting fear win. Cade came forward, tablet in hand. "Base commander arrived while you were gone. IG investigators en route. ETA 30 minutes. They want your statement." "They'll get it. Full testimony. Everything I saw, everything I experienced, everything Vance and Redemption Protocol did." Noel met his eyes. "You ready for the paperwork this generates?" "I've been ready since I read your file and saw those redactions." Cade's voice carried satisfaction. "Redemption Protocol ends today. Officially, permanently, with full documentation of why it was corrupt from inception." The IG investigators arrived in a convoy that suggested they took Rhett's findings seriously. 3 vehicles, 8 investigators, recording equipment, the bureaucratic machinery of military justice beginning its slow, thorough work. Noel spent 6 hours giving testimony. Every detail, every manipulation, every test, every moment when Redemption Protocol had pushed her toward becoming something less than human in service of being a more effective weapon. The investigators recorded everything, cross-referenced with Rhett's documentation, built a case that would dismantle the program and prevent similar programs from emerging. By 1400 hours Christmas Day, it was done. Captain Richard Vance was formally charged with ethics violations, illegal assessment protocols, psychological manipulation, and 18 other counts that would ensure he spent more time in courtrooms than freedom. Redemption Protocol was suspended pending full review, which was bureaucratic language for permanently terminated. 23 operators who'd been imprisoned for failing Vance's loyalty tests were released with full restoration of rank and back pay. And Captain Noel Winter, restored rank, effective immediately, was offered reinstatement to the Army Rangers, with promotion recognizing time unjustly served under dishonorable discharge. She accepted. 6 months later, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Advanced Marksmanship School occupied the northern section of the range complex, purpose-built facilities for training the next generation of precision shooters. Summer heat replaced winter cold, but the principles remained constant. Wind still lied if you didn't listen right. Distance still required mathematics and instinct in equal measure. Captain Noel Winter stood in front of 15 female rangers, ages 23 to 29, each one selected for marksmanship potential, each one carrying her own story of why she'd chosen this path. "Wind reading," Noel said, "is about listening, not calculating, not guessing, listening. Your instruments will fail. Your technology will malfunction. The wind won't wait for you to check your ballistics computer. She picked up a handful of grass clippings, released them. The wind carried them northeast, swirling in complex patterns that looked random but contained information for those trained to read it. Old school method, she continued. Watch the grass. Feel the pressure changes. Track the way light diffuses through moving air. Your body knows things your brain hasn't processed yet. Trust your instincts. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rhett, retired, now civilian instructor, watched from the instructor platform, arms crossed, nodding approval. They'd been teaching together for 3 months now, finding rhythms, building curriculum that combined old-school fieldcraft with modern technology, creating rangers who understood that tools were useful, but fundamentals were essential. After class, one of the students approached. Lieutenant Sarah Brennan, 25, 3 deployments, sharp enough to make Noelle work to stay ahead of questions. "Ma'am, can I ask something off topic?" "Go ahead." "The patch on your vest, Desert Noelle. There's no official unit with that designation. Where's it from?" Noelle touched the patch. Still there. Still over her heart. She wore it every day now, regardless of uniform regulations that suggested custom patches belonged in desk drawers. "It's from the night I learned that conscience isn't weakness," she said. "From people who treated me like an operator when I needed it most. From a Christmas that didn't feel like Christmas until it did." Sounds like a good story. It was a necessary story. Noelle looked at the young ranger. You'll have your own necessary stories. Moments when choosing right costs you, when integrity has a price. Remember those moments. They define you more than any qualification or evaluation. Lieutenant Brennan nodded, processing. "Thank you, ma'am." After she left, Red approached. "You're good at this." "I had good teachers." Noelle checked her watch. 1,600 hours. End of training day. "You heading back to your cabin?" "Eventually. Thought I'd stick around, help with gear inventory." It was a lie. Gear inventory didn't need 2 instructors. But it was the kind of lie that meant something true underneath. That Red enjoyed the work, enjoyed the partnership, enjoyed having purpose that didn't require classified operations or separation from humanity. They worked in comfortable silence, the way people did when words weren't necessary for communication. The mail delivery arrived at 16:30, standard military postal service. Bills and advertisements in the bureaucratic correspondence that followed service members everywhere. And one package, no return address, postmarked from Montana, wrapped in brown paper like something from an earlier era when mail meant more than spam. Noelle opened it carefully. Inside, dog tags, worn, old. Lieutenant Colonel James R. Winters identification tags from decades of service. And a note, handwritten on paper that had seen field use, creased from being carried in pockets through terrain that didn't care about preserving messages. "Mission complete. I chose. Fort Bragg, February 1st, if you'll see me. I understand if you won't, but I'm choosing to try. Choosing family. Finally. Dad." Noel read it twice, then handed it to Rhett. He read, handed it back. "You going to see him?" "I don't know yet." She turned the dog tags over, felt the worn metal that had survived years of service and choices that had cost everything. "Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks 8 years is too much damage to repair with one choice." 8 years is a lot of damage, Rhett agreed. "But one choice is how all repairs start. Question is whether he follows through, whether that one choice becomes a pattern. And if it doesn't, then you gave him a chance and he wasted it, but you'll know you tried. You'll know you were open to reconciliation when he was ready." Rhett put a hand on her shoulder, gentle, fatherly. "The son I lost, I'd give anything for one more conversation, one more chance to tell him I was proud. Your father's alive, imperfect, but alive. That's worth exploring." Noel tucked the note and dog tags into her pocket. She'd think about it. February 1st was 2 months away. Time to decide, time to prepare, time to figure out if forgiveness was possible or if some betrayals remained permanent. "Come on," Rhett said. "I'm buying dinner. There's a place off base that makes decent barbecue. We can celebrate." Celebrate what? 23 operators released from black site prisons. Redemption protocol officially terminated. Your rank restored. Vance in prison awaiting trial. Take your pick. They walked to Rhett's truck. The sun was setting now, painting Fort Bragg in gold and shadow. Soldiers finished training exercises. Families headed to base housing for dinner. Normal life. Normal purpose. The kind of peaceful routine that required constant vigilance to maintain, but felt worth maintaining. At the barbecue place, they found Bishop and Murdoch already there. Coincidence, supposedly, but the kind of coincidence that suggested someone had coordinated. "Captain Winter," Bishop said, standing. "Staff Sergeant Rhett. What a surprise." "Terrible liars, both of you," Noelle said, but she was smiling. They ate, they talked. They told stories about the night 6 months ago when a dishonorably discharged ranger had tripled a SEAL team's headshot count and chosen conscience over career advancement. Murdoch showed new pictures of his sons, growing fast. Jake had joined shooting sports at school, wanted to be a sniper like the lady his dad had helped. "I told him you'd probably let him visit the range someday, if you're open to it," Murdoch added. Noel smiled. "Any time. I owe him. That drawing, it reminded me why the choice mattered. He kept asking if you were okay, if the bad people hurt you. I told him you won because you chose right." Murdoch's voice went quiet. He said that's what heroes do. "I'm not a hero. You are to a 10-year-old who sees the world in simple truths. My sons know their dad helps people who choose conscience. That's the legacy I want." He met her eyes. "You helped me give them that." Bishop's daughter had started kindergarten, drew pictures of her daddy in uniform, understood now that he went away to keep people safe. Locke had transferred to training command, teaching communications to new SEALs, finding satisfaction in passing knowledge forward instead of deploying. Cade was up for promotion. Commander track, the kind of career that rewarded officers who made ethical choices even when those choices generated uncomfortable paperwork. They were all moving forward, building lives that honored what they'd learned in that desert on Christmas Eve. At 2200 hours, Noelle drove back to her apartment off base. Small, affordable, hers. The first space she'd owned that felt like home instead of temporary housing between deployments. On her mantle, the desert Noelle patch, framed. Jake's drawing, also framed. Her father's dog tags, displayed but not yet claimed as hers. And a photograph, new one, taken 2 weeks ago at Fort Bragg. Noelle in the center, surrounded by her students. 15 female rangers, all holding rifles, all smiling with the confidence of people learning to trust their capabilities. Rhett stood to the side, instructor, mentor, friend. The father figure she'd needed when her actual father had been too busy choosing missions over daughters. She looked at her father's dog tags, at the note promising he'd chosen family, at the date, February 1st, when she'd find out if promises meant anything. She picked up her phone, typed a message she'd been composing mentally for weeks. February 1st, 1400 hours, Fort Bragg main gate. We'll talk. No promises beyond conversation, but I'm willing to try. Noel. She sent it before she could reconsider. The response came 3 minutes later. I'll be there. Thank you for the chance. I won't waste it. Dad. Noel set down the phone, looked at the desert Noel patch, at the evidence that one night had changed everything, that choosing right over convenient had led here, to purpose, to community, to the possibility of reconciliation she'd thought impossible 6 months ago. Outside her window, Fort Bragg settled into night, lights on in base housing, families together, soldiers resting between obligations. The quiet routine of military life when nothing was actively trying to kill anyone. She thought about the desert, about Christmas lights blinking against darkness, about wind that told truth if you listened right, about the moment she'd chosen to shoot a radio instead of a man who'd shown her kindness. That moment had cost her nothing and gained her everything. She'd been right to refuse, right to question, right to choose conscience when obedience would have been simpler. Some legends were forged when the world was celebrating. Others were forged when you chose to break cycles that institutions wanted to perpetuate. She'd broken the cycle, and in breaking it, she'd found something she'd been searching for since her father had supposedly died 8 years ago. She'd found herself. Not the weapon redemption protocol wanted to create, not the obedient operator who shot when told without thinking, not the person who valued career over conscience, but the operator her father had trained her to be before missions and classified operations, and 8 years of manipulation had tried to erase it. Someone who protected innocence, who questioned illegal orders, who listened to wind and made shots that mattered, and taught the next generation that integrity wasn't weakness. Someone who survived winters. She turned off the lights. Tomorrow she'd teach 15 rangers how to read wind without instruments, how to trust instincts developed through practice and patience, and understanding that fundamentals mattered more than technology. Tomorrow she'd continue building the life she'd earned by choosing right when choosing wrong would have been easier. But tonight, she slept. For the first time in 8 years, she slept without grief crushing her chest. Outside, somewhere in the Montana wilderness, a father who'd chosen missions over daughter was learning how to choose differently. And in 2 months, on February 1st, they'd find out if some betrayals could be forgiven, if some relationships could be repaired, if some families could survive 8 years of lies and emerge stronger for having survived them. The answer wasn't certain, but for the first time since Christmas Day, 2026, Noel Winter believed the answer might be yes. And belief, even uncertain belief, was enough to build on. The desert didn't care about Christmas, but people did. And sometimes that made all the difference.